Hi, James.
Hello, Delara.
We're really looking forward to this coming autumn to study the Ramayanas with you. For those of you who don't know, James is our philosophy teacher in the 300-hour immersion program we're offering at Ashtanga Yoga Vevey. And so far, we've studied Samkhya with him, some Vedas, um, and Yoga Sutras last semester. And this coming semester in the fall, we'll be covering the Ramayanas and then Bhagavad Gita in the spring semester. I would like to ask James, so what is so special about the Ramayana?
Okay, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Delara. So, Ramayana. It's interesting. You mentioned we've studied already some Yoga Sutra, some Veda, some Sankhya, some of these background teachings that are very foundational in the Indic or yogic perspective. So, one thing that I find so beautiful in the Indian tradition is these very practical yoga teachings. We get access to them in many different forms, and there is this whole body of teaching that's sometimes called the fifth Veda. So maybe you might have heard that there are four Vedas. Sometimes people talk about three Vedas, sometimes people talk about four Vedas, these four ancient collections of texts. And these texts are considered repositories of all these basic teachings, but they're not so easy to access. But then in the yoga tradition, these teachings get condensed in different forms. So we have, for example, the Yoga Sutra. And a sutra means a stitch. It's like a little point, but that stitch holds, just like a stitch on a piece of clothing can hold a vast body of fabric, so a sutra can hold a vast body of teaching. It's like a key that opens a library of teachings. And the Bhagavad Gita, which, like as you mentioned, we'll do in the final semester of this 2-year course, that's a dialogue. It's a conversation. And yoga itself is a conversation. And the Upanishads, this section of the Vedic literature that's all about yoga teachings, Upanishad, it means to sit near and to be in conversation with. But when we come to Ramayana, it's sometimes called the fifth Veda. There are other texts that have this title too. And they have this title because there's the idea they communicate all of this practical Vedic wisdom, all of the practical juice that is found within this vast body of Vedic literature in a form that anybody can relate to because it's communicated via stories. So the Ramayana, it's also sometimes called Itihāsa. It means, which literally means so it happened, but it also means so it happens.
Mm.
So it's telling us the story of a human life. And Rāmāyaṇa, the ayana means the going of Rama, the journey, the trajectory, the adventure. So we have in this story basically the journey of yoga practice, the journey of a human life. And we have many extraordinary characters. And through their adventures, we can see so many practical teachings and then relate them very immediately to our own lives, but in a very easy way. So I don't know about you, Delara, but for example, if somebody tells me, you don't want to be living like that, you shouldn't do that, that type of instruction in a human psyche doesn't often land so well. I might
Yeah,
become quite resistant.
exactly.
But if I am given a story that's a kind of facsimile of me, I can see myself in the story and I can see, oh yeah, I fall down in that way. Oh, maybe I could rise up like that too. Then the story is this invitation for me to come to my own learning. And this
Mhm.
is utterly intrinsic to the yogic teaching method. It's always an invitation. It's always an empowerment. So it doesn't give us didactic, you must do this, you mustn't do that.
Mm.
Instead, it offers us these principles and says, explore this for yourself and find out if it works. But in the case of the Ramayana and Indic mythology more broadly, we are presented these teachings in the form of an amazingly flavorful and compelling story. And it's a story that's captivated human imagination for millennia. And the
Mm.
Ramayana is, spread all over Asia. It's just an extraordinary story. And it contains within it many other extraordinary stories, which are also full of yogic teachings. So, devoting 8 weeks of study to this is going to give us the chance to explore some of those framing stories or some of these stories within the story that are so helpful and relevant for a yoga practitioner. But
Mm.
we'll also have chance to consider how the main characters, Rama, Sita, Hanuman, Lakshmana, Ravana, how they relate to us.
Mhm.
So in the course, there'll be the storytelling element. So we'll be telling the story live. So it'll be a co-creation. It'll come through in a unique way, depending who's in the group. But then we'll also have time to kind of dive into the layers of suggestion that are conveyed in the story. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Beautiful. We're already very excited. So we've had actually some smaller Ramayana classes with James, and it's so exciting to hear James. He's an excellent storyteller, and he just makes it so like intriguing. We all turn into like little kids, like wanting to know what's next. And even if you've heard the story multiple times or read the book, it's always so nice to have someone tell you the story and then what things symbolize and what they stand for or how they different ways that it could be interpreted. And I guess depending on what each person is also living, it could be interpreted in different ways.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you to say, Delara. But I also, this live storytelling, it's very much part of the human learning tradition, not just in the yoga tradition, but all around the world. And I think it's something I found it so valuable. When I first started studying yoga, my first main teacher, his satsang classes, they would always feature a story.
Mm.
And, I was just loving it and drinking it up. But then what I noticed, this story-based learning, when my teacher would give a class on a Sunday evening, for example, the next morning I'm going to work and I see the teachings jumping out at me from all around.
Yeah.
And this thing of like gathering around the fire, Upanishad, to sit close to the teachings,
Hmm.
this is another aspect of this particular module, if you like, this semester as part of the training course, is that this is allowing us to immerse ourselves in yogic learning in a very traditional way, but which in the modern world, we maybe don't get so much opportunity to experience. Because as you suggested, when we actually get together and we all apprentice ourselves to the story, we all allow ourselves to open to it, as you suggested, it will come, everybody will receive it in a slightly different way. And it'll come through in a unique way. And this is the thing about wonderful stories. I've just reread one of my very favorite ever books, an Italian book. I've read it many times. And it leaves me with something fresh, something new. And this is the same with Rāmāyaṇa. I've read many, many versions of Rāmāyaṇa. I've heard it told live. I've told it live myself many times. But it's like a gift that never stops giving. These stories, they just keep opening up more and more.
Yeah. And why do you think, as yoga students or yoga practitioners, lifetime practitioners, it's so important for us to, at some point of our journey, to study Ramayana?
Well, I would suggest it's important or really helpful, really useful and supportive to keep consulting the story, not just to read it once, because serious practice, like committed practice, the yoga teachings, they give us a map.
Hmm.
And this map includes dark, unknown realms. The yoga masters, the great rishis, they told us the path will be like this. And the path is going to include periods where you might feel a bit lost. So, one of the amazing things in the Ramayana is it really maps out the journey of practice in a very realistic way. For example, we see some of the great heroes in periods of despair and feeling almost lost and hopeless. And then we see how they manage to navigate the depths of despair, how they face heartbreak and loss, when they're feeling intimidated, when they're feeling scared, the different resources that they draw on. So, as a practitioner, if we study Yoga Sutra, we study Bhagavad Gita, we study Rāmāyaṇa, we study the mythology, as we're going through our own practice, the more familiar we are with these resources, it's like we've got lots of support to steady us and give us a sense of orientation during those times when practice is changing or when life is whirling around us in a rather difficult way. So as we dive into the story, just like, say, for example, if we are, I mentioned just diving in, if we're a swimmer, the more we swim, the more we learn about being in the water. When we dive into Rāmāyaṇa, the story is about living a yogic life. So if we are practitioners, the more we soak in that story, the more we will familiarize ourselves with these resources that can help us day to day. So one thing that many people who've studied with me, we've done these courses where we work with the text, we work with mythology, that they really value is they say, it keeps the teachings front of mind. It keeps them lively in my awareness so they can keep evolving as my practice evolves. So one thing that's lovely about this upcoming course is being with the story over those couple of months. It can become part of our unique culture, let's say. We can start to integrate it into our own approach to practice.
Yeah, and what's amazing is that even though it's a story from ancient times, it's still relevant to what we live today, right?
Extraordinarily so. And I mean, this is the beauty of these great wisdom texts and stories and teachings from all around the world. You know, the ones that last, they stay relevant because they're about those timeless realities. So material surroundings may be a little bit different. However, in Rāmāyaṇa, we have flying machines. We have
Avatars.
we have, you know, all sorts of technologies or capacities that exceed some of the things that we are familiar with, or might seem, oh, this is like these things that are exploding all around us. And it is very much in the yoga tradition. There's the idea that these teachings have been given to help us now, to help us wherever we find ourselves in life. But this is one of the beautiful things. If we explore this text, we'll realize it's set now in the unfolding reality of this life. You know, yes, maybe it happened long ago. It's a history, but it's also the story of life as it unfolds now.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so in these 8 sessions, what will it be like? What will we be covering each session? Is it mainly just storytelling, or how are you thinking of structuring the sessions?
Yeah, so these sessions, there will be a storytelling element, certainly in the first, well, every session there'll be some storytelling for sure. But those who've worked with me before know that's not unusual. With this, in the yogic teaching method, there's a lot of story that's used to illustrate. But in this course, we will explore the whole story of the Rāmāyaṇa. And in the Rāmāyaṇa, the Valmiki Rāmāyaṇa, which is considered to be the kind of the original poetic form of it, the Balakanda, the first section, tells the whole story in brief. So in our first session, we'll also we'll look at the whole story in brief, because people don't read Rāmāyaṇa to find out what happens. We know the arc of the story. We read it so we can see what is happening, and we can use it as a mirror for our own life and practice. But along the way, we will also look at the story of the descent of the Ganges, of Ganga, and the story of the churning of the ocean of milk. And we'll also have some of the backstory to Rāmāyaṇa, including that of Rama's great teachers, Vasishta and Vishwamitra. So there'll be some other great stories that we will look at. So there'll be the storytelling, but then we'll kind of explore the story together. We'll unpack it together. So when we've looked at a certain incident, and we'll kind of zoom in on certain sections of the text, certain episodes, and consider them as they relate to our own lives and our own practice. If we're going to, for example, create, because one of the things about the adventure of the Ramayana is coming from a place of fracturedness or disintegration back into greater cohesion. So Sita is stolen away from Rama. And symbolically, we can see we find ourselves a bit fragmented. We are not as connected to our inner compass as we might be. So what will it actually take to bring about this restitution of what is known in Sanskrit as dharma, this sense of balance, this sense of being in harmony? And so we'll basically interrogate the teachings. So we'll have the story, but then it won't be like, okay, and good night. Like, there'll be a storytelling section, and then there'll be this kind of inquiring, unpacking, investigating, and interrogating section of the class.
Excellent, great. And do you think are there any prerequisites to join this course, or can students who have no background with yogic wisdom teachings can hop in and join?
Definitely.
This is a good entry point, right? To
Yes. I
become
mean, this is
familiar with the yogic teachings.
yeah, I mean, the idea that the story is very human, it's very resonant. So it's an amazing way to encounter the yoga teachings. I feel so fortunate. I encountered a lot of the teachings. I had teachers who told stories live in my early years of yoga study, and it was just so enriching.
Yeah.
And it brings all the other teachings to life. So if you have studied a bit of Yoga Sutra or Bhagavad Gita, for example, and then you go into Rāmāyaṇa, it's like, it'll all start to just light up in a new way. So if you've never, our yoga philosophy, Indic perspectives, I don't know anything about that, no problem. This is a very relatable story. So everybody's welcome. Yeah. If you like stories, yeah, don't miss this.
I personally, in my early years starting yoga, I was very intimidated by the Yoga Sutras because there's just a lot of Sanskrit words. And then it felt like we're decodifying some really difficult texts. And it was like each sutra just was condensed with so many different interpretations and meanings. And then also the Gita was like, whoa, this is like a really intense story. A war, and then it's just like, whoa, chaos. And I found Ramayana like one of the sweetest entryways. I was like, oh, this is so sweet. Like, at
Yeah,
least,
no, I mean, I think it's a great way to wherever we are, if it's the first contact or if we've been exposed to a lot of Indic or yogic teachings, revisiting Ramayana is also wonderful because, like I mentioned before, every time we come to it, it meets us where we are. So if that's a place that's brand new, the story will convey so many of the yogic principles in a very relatable way. And if we have been studying a long time, I think it will consolidate and expand some of the understandings we might have already come to.
yeah. And do you recommend students who want to join to prepare in any certain
Yeah, so I mean, if you would like to, there are lots of wonderful translations in French. There is one in the Albin Michel, Contes selon la tradition orale. I did read that a long time ago, but it was wonderful. It's really, really nicely done. In
Mhm.
English, there are lots of lovely renderings that are very accessible. There's one by, I think it's called Linda Egenis and Kumuda Reddy that was published quite recently. I really like that. They've done a lovely job. It's quite concise, but it really conveys the main action very nicely. The Ramesh Menon version, very flavorful, also not too long. And mean, there's no shortage of great translations out there or great renderings. One thing to be aware of is that there are many Rāmayanas. There's the Valmiki Rāmayana, which, you know, I have the Gita Press edition, and there are various critical editions. They're quite long. But there are also many regional Rāmayanas. So you can read a text and some of them will be a little bit different. But the main arc, very, very interesting. And we will study that together. Yeah. So if you want to do some pre-reading, that'd be great, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. So if they don't have time, they'll still be okay.
For sure. Yeah.
And we will finalize the days and dates, and we'll communicate that very soon, right?
Yeah, we'll put all the recommended books and the dates will all be in the description.
We're starting mid-September.
The week beginning the 15th of September for 8 weeks. Yes.
Wow, amazing. So just to let everyone know, the classes are offered in French and English, which I doubt that if anyone has taught Ramayana in French, at least an online course. And then there are all the recordings are available online, so you can join live or access the recordings, notes in both French and English. And also, James always shares reflection questions for homework. And then there's an end of a term, usually homework journaling that you can share and have James's feedback. There's room for discussion during the sessions, and we also sometimes organize extra discussion sessions to share how we're living the Ramayana, so which become really interesting and a great way for us to connect as a community and see how what we're all going through is so similar. Yeah, so anything else you want to add?
I guess the only thing that I would add is in the Gita, Krishna emphasizes the importance of wonder in practice. And the flavor of the Ramayana, the storytelling that is inherent in the structure of the story, and the poetry in the Valmiki Ramayana, it's full of wonder. So we're also going to be working with this quality of rasa, this flavor, and this will add this lovely layer of richness to our studies. And so all of those resources that you suggested to make people aware of, when we're reflecting, this type of story invites us into that space of wonder, which I think broadens our lens of inquiry and can make our practice accelerate, because it can help us get out of our preconceived notions. And because the story has this wonderful, captivating quality, it can invite us to approach the practice with that spirit of wonder and gratitude. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be working with Ramayana again. It's just wonderful.
Looking forward. So thank you, James.
Thank you, Lara.
Thanks for your time, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.